Hello, this is Will. I'm a real werewolf. Please like and subscribe to this channel if you would, or video or whatever. I've been asked to stop swearing by Louis, so as a favour, I'm going to stop swearing in this bit.
Hello, my name's Will. I'm going to carry on my story. The last part that I did was about me getting captured by the army in Kosovo and shit. If you don't know, I'm a werewolf. I'm a real werewolf. I was captured and stuff, and this is my story, and it's my autobiography and shit. I'm just getting it out there. So I was captured by the army, and go and listen to the last bit of what I did. Yeah. This bit's about meeting the guy I just knew as the chief. Fucking boss lad, like. So this other khaki-clad soldier walks into the room, and I kind of smelt and sensed his seniority more than saw it. I could feel he looked so fucking confident. And he took it was like a steel chair from the side door and dragged it noisily to within a few feet of me. And he just scraped it along the floor. It did my head in straight away. This man was in his early 50s, and he had no fear of me. I couldn't sense anything. His mind was locked, and he was just so calm. He was he was grey-haired, and he was so trim. There's no spare fat on him. He looked like fucking George Clooney, in many ways. He had a scar that ran from his right temple and into what once had been an eye. It was now, it was a fucking mess, to be honest. It was like a cloudy white orbit. It was horrible. And the other eye was like a beautiful blue eye. It was a mess. He also had burn marks running up from one side of his neck on the right side of his body. You could tell this man had been on the wrong side of some fucking serious action. Amusingly, what made me laugh, for all his coolness and his calmness, that he actually had tan lines from his sunglasses. This fucking really cool, hard-looking dude, and he had these tan lines. It just so funny. His heart rate was fucking low. He was relaxed, and in comparison to the other men, he just sat down and sighed. He was just. As I looked at him, I kind of realised that he was sick. I've got this ability with being a werewolf. I can run my I call them godlike senses over someone, and I noticed that he had where his prostate was located. There was loads of inflammation and stuff. That his prostate was on the boundary of being cancerous, or had cancer or something. I can tell these things. I'd be useful if I was a doctor or something. I could tell that he liked a beer and he smoked. He was straight and he was married. I could even smell his wife's perfume. I think the fragrance is called Chloe or something. I get quite good at these things. He was confident, but he maintained enough distance to ensure that in whatever form that I took, I would not be able to reach him. He also knew that he needed to be close enough to me so that I could see his smile and his facial expressions clearly, so that we, could engage in full communication. After he placed his chair down, I noticed that there was a cross on the ground in white tape, so it'd obviously been planned so that he had put his chair there, and he stood at me, and he stood for a long period behind the chair and just looked at me, just fucking stared at me. After a while, he kind of just sucked his teeth and gave a long sigh. In his hand, he had one of those brown manila folders, and he slowly sat and crossed his legs. He sat down and he crossed his legs, and he was just looking at me in the cage. I was just knelt there before him. I couldn't stand up or anything. It was too small, and I was trying to get eye contact. When I did catch his eye, I nodded and smiled in what I was trying to be confident and look dangerous. It didn't affect him at all. He kind of smiled, and I remember it, he just pushed his peak up of his hat, because he had this cap on with the index finger of his right hand. It was just so fucking cool. And at the same time, his facial expression gave an air of amusement at my poor attempt to intimidate him. He just sat there and stared at me for quite a long period of time, and he was kind of fiddling with the wedding ring on his finger. He had it on his left hand. He was spinning it around with his the fingers with his right hand. I didn't know if that was like a tell. You know, yeah, people have tells in poker. You know, was that me being worried or something? He was probably setting me up, or you know, it was probably a feint or something. And I sensed he was like a pretty wily fellow. As we'd say in Star Wars, the Force was strong in this one. I think he stopped his misdirection and he like flattened his trousers down to his thighs, and slowly with purpose he like opens up the folder and started looking through several papers and photographs and stuff. I could see that he was like considering what he was going to say next. There's like a sudden like burst, like a small radio burst on his chest, a static. And he was a bit shocked, and then he kind of like removed it from his jacket and switched it off and stuck it in his trousers. I could see that he had like, it was supposed to be hidden, but I could see an earpiece in his left ear. He was probably being like spoken to, given advice and stuff from people watching. I also noticed there were as many cameras focused on him as there was on me. I mean, this shit was a really well planned thing. The earpiece and the tape cross or something, and it means it had been really planned in minute detail. As all these, you know, this all started to soak in, and I got the first hint about the situation. I was going to be in a difficult one from, you know, how the fuck was I going to get myself out of this? My wolf soul thing I call Fen went and sat behind him and had a quick like look through the papers in the folder. Fen can't fucking read. He's a fucking wolf, but he can like make the images come into my head so I could see what he was looking at. We can like share each other's consciousness. It was a bit of a bonus in this way. A lot of the papers had nothing to do with me, actually. It was just like fucking blank or just nothing, rubbish. They were just there to pad out the paperwork. I mean, there were like several reports from people describing like primary and secondary evidence of a werewolf-like creature that had been killing villagers and soldiers and shit. I read the top of the first report that described me as being well over 10 feet tall. And like, I think it said I weighed a ton. That's fucking amazing. I mean, I wish. There were several like photos of me taken, some from above and some pictures from the... Can I get a drink? Cheers. And some pictures from the CCTV that had been in the military zones. Not much there in the folder, really. It could be that with all those cameras and with all that security surrounding me, that he was bluffing about how much they knew about me. Perhaps they realised I had a posit that would look at the papers. I don't know. It was, I mean, who knew? But I was an expert poker player, so all this info just built up a set of ideas in my mind. It would be interesting to see where they went with this. They were pretending they were confident and in control, when in reality they were shitting their respective pants and winging this whole thing, I reckoned. This may turn out to be it might have turned out to be fun. Let's face it, they only had to make one mistake. If they make one mistake, then that's all I need to get out. He uncrossed his legs and he placed his booted feet on the ground with a thump. With my fine-tuned hearing, I could hear the conversation that was going on in his ear about, you know, talking to me and stuff. He nodded to one of the cameras and leant forward on the chair. He was like bending low to get to eye level with me in the cage. The man had listened to his body language experts on being non-threatening, or maybe just enough threatening in this posture. His next few words were shockingly unprofessional, and I expected, I would really never expect it from an officer to be, you know, like this. I remember what he said. He just said to me, "Well, fuck me sideways, a fucking werewolf." And then he laughed. He just fucking laughed at me. I tried to work out where he's from, but he'd spoken with no, like, accent that you could tell. He could have been from anywhere. This was really pissing me off. I bit my lip hard in response to the anger that I felt, and as it bled, I tried to hold back my wolf. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck rise. I looked past the seated soldier's shoulder, and I made eye contact with my posit. Like, he shook his head in admonishment at me. He's like, "I'm not going to fucking change into the beast with you." He wasn't going to allow that. However, I'd been captured, and they were very smart. The size of the crate that they'd put me in meant that, you know, if I did actually try and change into the beast, then I would be a big beast in a very small cage, and it would probably be really extremely uncomfy. So I don't think I could actually change. So Posit was right to do that. I don't think it'd have been right to wolfify at this stage anyway. It would have been silly. I decided I was not going to transform right now. It would give these people proof, but I was pissed off. He definitely made the top of the shit list that day. He would get his reward. It may take a while, but I'd fucking have him at some point. He started speaking again to me. I remember it. He said, "A werewolf. The thing about which children's nightmares are made. Oh, and those crappy movies. How are you doing?" I think this was a joke. I don't think it was a sincere question. And then he said, "I'd shake your hand, but I like my arm." And then he laughed. I smiled in acknowledgement of his fucking wit, while inside his laughter hurt. That pain of mine would be a fucking big regret of his. The humour just gave him a few more minutes of suffering when I got my hands on him. I would give him a few more moments of a painful life for his contemplation. The Posit was circling and sniffing him. It looked confused and then came back to the side of the cage and sat down, resting his head on the bottom of the bars by my feet. And then the Posit communicated with me, and he put into my head and he said this: he's not a normal person mentally. Will, he's fucking something different. And when Fen says that, I'm a bit worried. The man in the chair, the chief guy, was still holding my eye contact from when he'd spoken before. He was doing that thing of giving me the long pause so that I felt obliged to fill with it, to say something. This guy was good. The people in his ear were telling him about my elevated body system's response to his comment. This was interesting. How were they doing that? Then I noticed that I had a small sore spot above my left shoulder blade. I then looked at Posit and did the telepathy thing, and I said, "What did you see and do anything to my shoulder?" So the Posit then said, "Yeah, they kind of stuck something in you. They stabbed in a big needle thing into your shoulder." "Why?" he replied. I didn't want to worry him, so I told him there's no worries, and I told him I think they've left something inside me. It's just a wee bit sore. He lifted his head and looked at the person, and I could actually see the Posit was a bit worried. And I tried to reassure him. I said, it's this is going to be awful for them. They've really fucked up here. I got to admit, I was a bit worried. They'd obviously pushed some kind of monitoring device into my body, and that they would be able to keep an eye on my vitals. Maybe they did not know my body would soon push it out to heal if I wished. And that advantage would be gone when I wanted. I could force it out. That's part of my healing properties as a werewolf. The guy was just still sat there. You think he knew all the secrets of getting people to talk. He was probably an interrogator or something. I smirked and looked down at my hands. I was trying to think of how I was going to handle this situation. I was somewhere I did not know, in a scenario I did not know, for some purpose I did not know, with people who knew exactly what I was. Even with my, I'm fucking superbly self-confident, but I didn't have any idea about what was my next step. Was I going to play the innocent card or not so innocent card? I felt myself go hard in front of him through sheer excitement. I mean, I literally got an erection. His eyes dropped to my lap, and then I could see that this really fucking rattled him. He exposed a micro expression of shock, and then showed a remarkable quick recovery to a calm smile. This shit was exciting, and I got him to react. When I had not spoken to fill the pause, he sat back in the seat, crossing his legs, and sighed again, resuming to look through these papers that had fuck all on them. Now nothing was said or done. I just stared. He sat there in silence, going through the notes, and I sat there silently thinking as quickly as I could about my next steps. I started to chat with the Posit in my head. He often needed reassurance that all was going to be okay. He was a little needy like that at times. So I was telling him, I said, I think I'm going to take this slow and build up the tension. That's what they're trying to do with me, so I will send that right back at them, Posit. Patience is the key in these cases, and is that okay with you? So Posit did the big dog yawny thing that big dogs do and sent a message to my mind. He said that he suggested that I get myself out of the cage and kill everybody, that kind of usual thing. And then he said, but okay, you normally have the best plans and you've got a good brain in that skull of yours. So he's like, we'll just do what you want to do. So I said, right, okay. And then I told him I was going to have to be like extremely clever in this scenario, and then I relaxed and kind of sat back. But I never took my eyes off the guy. After a long time, the old warrior just got up from his seat and turned his back to me and really slowly dragged his chair back to the place by the door. The scraping of the legs of the chair as it dragged across the floor went right through me, and he knew it. He turned to the two soldiers at the door. The soldiers nodded at him in recognition. He stood waiting. "Please open," he said. He spoke to the door. It sounded like some complicated unlocking was taking place in response, and it took some time for it to swing open, the door, that is. Then he left the door and closing, and it's kind of sealed itself after him. Obviously, he kind of was followed out by the other two soldiers, and I literally could feel the sense of relief as they walked out. It was amazing, and I was actually starting to fucking enjoy this.